So why don't we just start with like an introduction about you and yourself and what you're doing here today, and then we'll just kind of roll into the questions.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I'm 31 years old. I've been in real estate for I think about 4 years now, give or take. It seems like a long time, but sometimes when I think about it, it seems like not that long. But married, got 3 kids. As of 6 months ago, recently became an entrepreneur again. So I started my own handyman company so that way I could have more time for podcasts, more time for my family, like decide if I want to go to work or not. Um, and then just have more time for real estate as well. Prior military, did several years in the Marines, was a law enforcement officer for a little while as well.
Wow,
So it's kind of been a little bit everywhere.
very cool. And you said you're 31, huh?
Yeah.
Three kids. What's the spread on that? I only have two. I just had my second, but
Well,
what I always like to
congratulations.
hear about. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, the
And then
spread, 5, 3, and 1.5.
ooh, nice and close.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Then you get them out of diapers all basically at the same time or near the same time, then you're
Yeah.
like, "Cool."
Well, the concept we had, and it's proven to be, I don't know, probably about 75% accurate, was by the time you have, like, your 3rd, your oldest one is big enough to actually be of help and be useful, and so that's actually proven pretty true. So our oldest one is pretty helpful with the baby, and, so they can
Is
play and get along, and it's good.
is the oldest a girl or boy?
They're all girls, so, somebody help me. I'm swarmed.
Man, I was just about to say, like, I have 2 girls, but, I grew up with all girls too, so
Ah,
you actually got me beat, my man.
yeah.
Well, congrats to that.
Well, thank you.
It's definitely, it's different household when it's all women. I know
Oh,
I
yeah.
just, totally but it's at the same time super fun. At the age of 5 is I love it. I mean, my daughter's about to be 5, but, like, just, coming of that age, the age gap, she's just wants to help and be a big sister,
So
so I'm
I'll
sure it's probably
tell
the
you
same
this
thing.
story. I thought this was funny. About 6 months ago, me and my wife, uh, I no, I got up because the 2 older girls were awake. They share a room, and so they woke up, and it was early. And I usually get up around 5ish or so, have a cup of coffee, start my day. But they were in the room and they were awake, but I didn't want them to get up yet. So I went in there and I crawled in bed with they have bunk beds, so I crawled in bed with the younger one and I fell asleep. And so
Nice.
they snuck out of bed while I was asleep, and then they went downstairs, and then they got eggs and bacon, and they were cracked the eggs and stirred the eggs in the bowl, and they were trying to figure out, like,
What?
if they should wake me up or wake mommy up to start the oven so they could make breakfast, and then they
Wow.
insisted on making breakfast, the 5 and 3-year-old, so we had to basically just assist, and, they actually made breakfast.
They pulled it off?
They did, yeah, very successfully, actually.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah,
Uh,
they're pretty smart kids.
Pretty independent. Very sounds, like you guys raised them well.
We're working on it. It never stops, but I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Well, awesome. Well, I wish you best of luck with them. Sounds like, well, I wanna get the girl dad shirt. When I ever get it, I'll have to send you one.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll totally wear that for sure.
Totally. Yes. Alright, so I guess we'll just get into the questions.
Sure.
Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today. I really appreciate it. It's just nice to have someone, just to be on the same level as far as real estate, like-minded, and just hopefully just promote each other and whatever comes out of it, just top of mind type of stuff is what I usually am looking for with my podcast stuff. But I usually just send out, I do little shorts and stuff on the social media and stuff
Gotcha.
like that. So
Cool.
anyway,
Awesome.
so can you share your journey into real estate
Yeah.
investing or sorry, in real estate investing and what motivated you to start?
Yeah, absolutely. So the journey kinda started in, really about 2019. So at the time, I was out of the military, and, I was, a police officer now. But of course, this was right when COVID started happening and all that jazz. And I had just gotten off of FTO, which for everybody else, that's field training. So I had been released. So I had my own card. I wasn't riding with anybody. And so I was like doing my own thing. But all of a sudden,
Yeah.
we were told, hey, you can't stop cars for risk of getting COVID. You can't really do your job. And when you start out as a beat cop on patrol, you most of your stuff is traffic infractions and things of that nature. And of course, you answer 911 calls and things like that. But I was a little bit like not wanting to sit around. So I was having a hard time with it. And it was at
Feel
night.
you.
So it was like 12-hour shifts and
Oh,
I had nothing to do. So I was listening to music. And then I just realized that I was wasting hours and hours and hours not learning anything. And I was never great at school, but I enjoyed learning. But being like cooped up in a classroom type environment, I actually learn well
mm,
like that, but I have a very short attention span.
mm.
Um, if I'm very interested in it, it's easy for me to learn. But anyway, so I remember back
No,
years
yeah.
ago how my dad had bought a couple of houses and they tried the real estate thing, but they didn't do it right. And they didn't have any
Mm,
mentors. They didn't have anyone to help them along the way. This is well before podcasts had started. This was probably,
sure.
I don't know, 2005, 2007, somewhere around there.
Oh, right around the crash too,
Yeah,
huh?
yeah. And
Okay,
so they had them before and they ended up liquidating 'em before the crash happened. And man, I wish
got
they never would have done that.
it.
But they probably would have still had them too.
Oh,
But and anyway, so I started searching on Spotify, just looking for a real estate podcast, just out of curiosity, and
right.
I came across Dustin Heiner with Master Passive Income, and I went all the way back to number one. So I didn't start with the one on the top of the chart. I went all the way back to number one. I think he had 200, 250 episodes out about
Oh,
it.
number his very first episode?
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha,
I
gotcha.
figure we'll just start there, and if I don't like his whatever, I'll find another one until I find one that's interesting. Or, but it turns out I
Yeah.
really clicked with him, and I really liked it because he's a Christian like myself. He's married, got kids, and he quit his job from doing single family rentals out of state because he was in California and he couldn't buy in California and cash flow,
Wow. Yeah.
and so he basically got to where they were making more money than his than was required. So it took 6.5 years, I think, and then he was able to quit his 9 to 5 job and just live completely off of real estate. And then in that process, he realized that he there was a bunch of people in his church and friends and things like that that were asking him, "Can you teach me how to do this?" And he's a super smart dude, really humble, loves to help people, and that was one of the biggest attractions to me is he was very humble about it, but he's like, "This is how you do this." And he wanted to help people do it. And the thing he always says is, "I'm going to teach you how to fish so you can fish. I'm not going to give you the fish. So
Yeah.
I'm show you how to do this, and then when you're ready to go, you go. Like
Yeah.
no more coaching, you just go do it." And so I was like, well, okay, maybe we'll give this a shot. And so I qualified to be a student based on listening to his podcast. So I was like, well, I qualify. And you don't need to be a student of his either. You can listen to his podcast and do great
How do
because
you qualify? Like, I mean, what was the
so
qualification?
he had some basic things like you need to have at least $10,000 available. You don't need to be out of debt, but you need to have like minimal debt, or you need to be able to set money aside monthly towards.
Got it.
So he didn't want you if you, not that he didn't want to have you, but if he's looking at it from a realistic point of view, if you're $100,000 in debt and yeah,
Yeah, you're
it's
not
really
going
hard to
anywhere.
do.
Sure.
Um,
That makes total sense.
yeah,
It's like, why waste anybody's time? Because
exactly,
you guys
exactly.
that's just hurdles that you're starting to get over before you even start.
Yeah,
Sorry.
100%. And so I realized, well, I'm the kind of guy where I don't want to recreate the wheel. I don't like doing things from scratch and making a ton of mistakes. I will if I have to, but I would rather pay for coaching and just avoid a bunch of the mistakes and start out on a really good foot. So From there, signed up, did one-on-one coaching, and his coaching stuff is for 6 months, and it still is. So you pay
Okay.
for a one-on-one coaching, you get this program, and the program is awesome. It gives you a step-by-step of how to create the business, the LLC, all the way to the types of
I
banks
see.
he recommends, the lenders, and then we go into how to actually find property managers and then areas of the country and then property managers to manage the properties because he doesn't manage any of his own properties. So it's very
Right.
hands off. And that's the way I prefer mine as well. Um, and so I went through the whole program. And to be quite frank with you, the at the end of the 6 months, I hadn't got one because I was like, man, I don't want to lose a bunch of money.
Right. Yeah.
Because I'd sold a truck and a bunch of other things to get about $22,000. So I was like, I don't wanna lose it. Now
Sure.
we could have watched it all burn, and we would have
Right.
been totally financially fine, but when you start out,
Yeah,
you're
you're
like,
just
"Oh, man."
yeah,
Um,
totally.
it's scary, taking a step into the unknown, and I was like, "Well, I'm not gonna buy in my backyard because my market is really not good." It's
Uh,
really expensive to live where I live, to buy. Now, fortunately, I have
right.
a house already, so not too bad for me,
That's
but,
that's
um,
good.
so I settled on Ohio for location for the
Okay.
first house, and
Okay.
um, I had to re up the coaching, so I decided to re up, and then I was like, "That's it, no more cold feet. I'm just doing it." So, um, found a house, negotiated, and bought it for 60 $62,500, I believe, at the time, and it was just south of Cleveland.
Okay.
Um, Needed rehab, put 12 grand into
Okay.
rehab, and then rented it out, had a property manager. They started out really good, but I ended up firing him going to the number 2. So,
Okay.
and, that one now, makes me about $510 a month cash flow. I've had it for, well, since I guess that would have been like mid-2020 at the time,
Okay. Okay.
and, that's been a great property, very, very steady.
What
So,
about the renovations? Did you sub that out?
mhm. Yep, so I did
Cool.
all of that. I had a property manager originally, and then they wanted to tack on all these fees because I was new to looking at property management agreements, and they had all these hidden fees and things like that, and I know better now, and I'm really specific about my questions that I ask. And that's one of the things we teach
Smart.
students is send us your property management agreements. We'll help you go through it. We'll redline it. You need to get answers to these things. Um, So anyway, I ended up firing him, and it was the renovation process. So I was managing the renovation while I was in Virginia over the phone. And so I was having the guys send me pictures and things like that. And I was talking to Dustin about it while I was doing it. He was a great help, of course.
That's
Uh,
good.
and so we got all done, and I had found a new property manager, vetted him, still have that property manager. And
Cool.
um, they ended up renting it for $1,100, and this is like a 950 square foot house, so it's not big. Um,
Okay.
so once I got it rented out, I did a refinance, and I pulled like 4 grand back out, but I decided to leave
Mhm.
another 8,000 in it just so that way I could get a little bit better cash flow. Um, Now that house is worth about $105,000.
Very
So
nice.
yeah, it's a great house. Um, I've considered selling it, but it's at a 5.5, and at the time, 5.5 was expensive. But the lender that I went with, they were handling rehab as well as the refinance.
Ah,
It was a kind of like a
cool.
package deal, and I was okay with
Sure. Okay.
it. So
That's perfect.
yeah, it was a very interesting first property.
Yeah. I mean, how do yeah, doing all absentee stuff just from pictures and on the phone and all that stuff, that's gotta be, very fun. But at least you found the right project manager.
Yeah.
It took the first one to get fired, but at least, like, you're still with them, so that's huge.
Oh yeah,
Um,
he's great. Just calls me anytime there's a problem. and that's about it. And really, we haven't had many because I'm one of those guys where if it's going to be a problem in a year, that's too soon. So let's fix it now. So I don't really let my maintenance go too far
I like
before it's
that.
fixed because I really want my tenants to have a nice place to live. Like they're paying me to live there. And yes, it's cash flowing for me. But if I'm going to go live in a place and I had to rent, I want it to be clean, safe, dry, all that stuff. So I want to make sure my tenants have the same thing.
That's awesome.
So
Uh, I mean, I don't think a lot. I mean, that's all that a tenant could ask for, you know? So
yeah,
that's pretty cool.
yeah.
What ab So what are some of the biggest challenges you faced when you first started investing in real estate, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah. So really the first challenges are basically the same for everybody, I think. Um, Usually that it comes down to once you get over the fear of actually buying one, the next problem is financing. So you run out of money,
Yep.
right? So, um, which happened with me. And so what I ended up doing is actually reaching out to friends locally where I'm at in Virginia. And I got a couple of um, a buddy who is a great raw land. He flips raw land, wholesales raw land, and he's very good.
Okay.
And so I reached out to him and said, "Hey, I'm looking for a lender. This is what I'm doing." He said, "Well," and for anybody listening, when you get private money lenders,
Mhm.
you need to protect them. So you don't share their contact information with just anybody. The way that my friend did it with me is the way that I've followed that process. So he found out what I was doing, and then he reached out to the lender and said, "Hey, I know this person, so on and so forth. They're looking for private money to do burrs," which is exactly what I was wanting to do. And he said, "If you're interested, I'll pass his contact info to the private money." And he was, and so we ended up meeting for coffee, and, I just explained the first deal that I'd done, which was super helpful, and he was very impressed, especially 'cause I to this day, I've never seen it. I go to Google Maps one Street View when I wanna see it. Um,
Wow.
so and,
You
up to
still
that
haven't
point,
seen
I'd
it
never
in
been to
person.
Ohio. Um,
Wow.
and, by the end of our little coffee, we talked for 30, 45 minutes, and, by the end of it, he said, "Well, do you wanna check for 250,000 now or later?" And I was like, "Whoa, dude, whoa. How about I find a house first, and then we'll go from there?" Um,
Whoa.
so
Nice.
he has helped me with, 3 deals currently, and, he our first deal, he helped me purchase a small mobile home park. Um,
Oh, the whole
and
park?
yeah, it's a very small one.
Cool.
So it's a
Okay.
10 pad that had
Nice.
7 mobile homes on it. 1 was abandoned, 1 the owner had the title for, so that actually got transferred at closing. And then an old duplex. And so that was a pretty wild one. I knew absolutely nothing about mobile homes, mobile home parks. Now, I did know that they were technically a vehicle, and so it's a title. It's not like
Mm,
a deed, like a house. You get a deed for the
mhm.
land, but not the
Right.
vehicle. Um, so that was
And
a
they're renting space from you
correct,
instead of on top of paying for the mobile home. Am I correct?
correct. Now that depends on if they're tenant owned or park owned. So
Right, right. Got it.
out of the 7, 5 were let me make sure that I'm telling you the right number. Yeah, 5 were tenant owned and still are currently tenant owned. And the lot
Okay.
rent for that was $105 a month.
Oh,
And
okay, that's not bad.
they pay all utilities. It's on town water, town sewer. So, and the tenants are responsible for their own utilities and they had to mow their grass. Um,
That
so really pretty well set up, except for the fact that the guy who owned it and the reason he was selling is he really shouldn't have been a landlord. Um,
oh,
he was having to go knock on their doors on Saturday to collect rent. And I'm like, as soon as I heard that, I was like, this is not good. I've never run that like that.
right.
Um, so I ended up he had bought it 4 years previously and actually wanted to bulldoze the whole thing and put fishing cabins there. But in doing so, he would have displaced 7 people, 5 to 7 people, families, and the
Families,
local
yeah.
town and you got to remember, this is Southwest Virginia. Like, you can't just come in as an outsider and decide you're going to do something like that. You got to know people. You got to communicate. You need to ask. You need to not really play
There's
buddy buddy, but you need to do it in a professional manner. And he just came in and he was well, I'm a Southerner, so he was a Northerner, and he just showed up and
uh,
said, "This is how we're gonna do it," and the whole town was like,
they didn't like
"No."
that,
So, they shut him
huh?
down, and so now he had this property that he didn't really want anymore. So, he
Mm,
bought it for 200, I bought it for 175, he took a 25,000 loss on it, and then started the whole escapade of getting the one person that was, on drugs out of the whole thing. She was
oh
squatting.
boy, oh boy.
Um, the abandoned mobile home was not livable. It had some serious rot. Doors, windows need to be replaced. Floors had cats living underneath it. Sewer issues. And you don't find out all this until you get into it. Really, like
Yeah.
I recommend anybody that is looking at some of these things find this stuff out first. I did not, and it was an interesting learning experience. Um, there was also an abandoned Jeep in front of this abandoned single wide. And so I was like, well, the Jeep might actually be worth something. It was a 2007 Cherokee and
Mm,
no keys, no nothing.
hmm,
And so I decided to call a locksmith and said, hey, I need this thing opened. And I went through the whole DMV process to get the title, which took 60 days. A Getting a new title made for a single wide, since it's technically um, well, livable space. They have
mm,
before, but I cannot recall at this time. But they that took 6 months for me to get the title. But when I got it,
dang,
the only thing the DMV did was charge me taxes, and they didn't know the value, and neither did I. So they charged me $134 in taxes, which was the cheapest they could charge me. So I got that
perfect.
title for 134 bucks and the title for the Jeep for 134 bucks. And the Jeep needed new tires and a new battery and new windshield wipers, and then it passed our state inspection, and I sold it for 7,500 bucks. Um,
Nice.
so
That's pretty good.
it was killer. Um, and so I took the money from that, and the duplex that's on the property needed one half of it was rough. The other half was rough too, but the tenant was in it, and they were paying because they were on Section 8, and they didn't want to leave. So I decided to put a new roof on the whole thing, and that Jeep paid for the whole roof. Um, and then I rehabbed the inside of one half of the single wide. It was renting for 425. After I rehabbed it, it was 750, and they paid their own utilities.
Nice.
Um, and then got the um my delinquent, my special child, as I called her, out of the single wide where she was squatting. Um, didn't have to do any cash for keys.
Nice.
I went down there on a Saturday or something like that when I knew that people were down there, and I caught her going in the trailer, and I said, "Hey, look, either you pay rent and you pay all the back rent for the past 2 years, and I'll give that to the previous owner, or you've got 60 days to move out." And I was like, "Also, you're on drugs, and I don't allow illicit drugs on my premises at all." And I was like, "And I own the trailer." So she tried lying to me and saying, "Oh, I'm not on drugs." And keep in mind, this is 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the sun was shining, and her pupils were dilated. And so I did the classic thing where I just leaned in and I said, "You're lying to me, and I know because I was a cop." And at this point, I was no longer a police officer. So, um, hence the past tense. But anyway, learned a lot of things. I've gotten that thing from where it was only bringing in $950 a month to now it's at 30. It fluctuates some, but it's more like
Uh-huh.
$3,300 on
That's
average,
great.
with room to
Nice.
bring more trailers in. So it's been a pretty good learning experience.
That's I mean, all said and done, it's not like you I thought you were going a different way with that story, and I thought you were about to say you learned a lot and you lost a lot, but at least you're still
No,
that's
I've still
awesome.
got
I'm
it.
glad to hear that.
I, I've
Yeah, that's
I've
awesome.
I've contemplated actually like if I would sell it, but the thing is where it's located is smack in the middle of this little town, but the town is growing, and it could be $1 million property in the next 10 years. So I'm kind of loath to get rid of it. So I'll
Mhm.
probably keep it for the long run unless opportune offer comes down the line that is just good for the time. But
Yeah,
it's got a lot of potential as a property itself. And I got a below tax assessed value. And yeah, I did a phase one environmental on it at the suggestion of another investor who has dealt with mobile home parks, and that came back clean, which was good.
perfect.
So it was a great learning experience, and I'd actually like to own another one.
Yeah?
Oh
So
yeah.
are you actively looking or,
So more
you just
passively looking. Um,
okay,
I've got a lot of irons in the fire currently, so I am
cool.
uh, right now kind of on the fence of do I look for more small mobile homes, which mobile home parks like 20 and less, which that or do more single family, which is truly at this point for me is very easy. I don't have to think that much about it. It's pretty simple. Um, or I have a flip house that I bought like 3 4 months ago that I'm almost done with. So, but I'm doing a good amount of the work and management on that one because
Okay.
I can shift my schedule around and it's local.
Yeah,
Um,
cool.
so that's I've remodeled houses in the past, but I've never done one with the sole purpose of it being a flip. So this is the first venture into that arena. And
Nice.
my private money guy helped me out with that one as well. Um,
Very
and
cool.
which is great because I just called him and said, "Hey, I got this house, $84,000." And he said, "When do you want to close?" I said, 7 days. And he's like, "All right, you got the money." And that's it. So
That's a nice, connection to have.
very nice. And it's all about the relationship, really.
I was just about to say that, man. It sounds like you got those relationships going.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing with real estate, with private money, particularly, and just real estate as a whole. But to
Yes.
me, it's your net worth is your network. And somebody said that I'm stealing that. I cannot remember who said that, so I didn't come up
I've
with it.
heard it before
Yeah,
too. Yeah, no, it's a
and
good one though.
it's it's so true.
Yeah,
And the more you're around people who are doing the same thing as you, the more you learn, and the more you get to help other people, and that pays dividends in the long run. Um, and it's great. Just maintaining the relationships though, and being completely transparent and honest with everybody, and saying like, "Look,
goes
this may be a little bit of a sketchy deal. I don't know. I'm still running the numbers." So I was like that with my private money guy, and he's
goes a
he's
long way, huh?
fantastic. Yeah, and he's been in the game for a while. So he would actually look at the deal and say, "Well, let's not structure it this way. Let's structure it this way because this is a better use of my money for you, and I don't
Yeah.
care." So, and so he would actually structure the deal and with me as the private money guy being new to it. And
Yeah,
he just had all these great suggestions on how to do it. Um,
so cool.
so
Ye I love it. I love it. Yeah, I absolutely 100% agree. You know, it's all about your network. And me being in real estate as a real estate agent about just as long as you have, it's like, you know, the people that have been in it longer, you can just tell the ones that are not during, you know, the pandemic because that was, like, crazy good for everybody with the
yeah,
interest rates, but now that things are coming back to the normal, the usual, those are the veterans that are actually, you know, having the connections and having those relationships and the referrals, and that doesn't happen overnight, that's for sure.
it sure doesn't.
So, you know, you
Yeah.
can tell that they've been doing it the right way, for quite a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's don't be for people listening, don't be afraid to go meet new people and let them know what you're doing. That's the biggest mistake I think most beginning investors do is they don't tell people what they're doing or what they want to accomplish. And so nobody knows. Nobody will know how to help you or know that you're doing anything. Well, let's face it, it's extraordinary what when you start investing. It's not normal. The amount of people that are absolutely scared to buy a house just for themselves to live in is kind of
Yes.
ridiculous. And
Yes.
it's so if you don't tell people, you're going to have a hard time. And that's why with master passive income, um, we teach our students when you become a student or when you start learning about real estate and you're going to do it, guess what? You don't even have to have a house. You're a real estate investor now. So you're making that switch in your brain, and
Oh,
you're becoming one. You are one now, and so you're always becoming a better investor, but you're now a real estate investor. So start telling people what you're doing and what you're wanting to accomplish.
very cool. I like that. So what key strategies can you recommend for, someone that's looking to quit their job and achieve financial freedom through real estate?
Well, starting would definitely be knowledge. Like get knowledge, listen to podcasts. If you're listening to this podcast, you're already on a good foot. Um, Reading, if you don't like reading or you don't have the time, but you have time to listen to stuff, get Audible, listen to real estate books. Highly, highly recommend it. Couple of good ones come to mind. Obviously, Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant. They're amazing. Um, and then Dustin Heiner has a couple of books out, How to Quit Your Job, JOB, as he calls it, Just Over Broke Job with rental properties. And then Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. I mean, there's
Mm,
tons of them.
that's so
And
many.
yeah, oh yeah. But knowledge is the first, and then get in the right rooms with the right people. And sometimes go find a real estate meetup local to you. Facebook, you can find them on Facebook. You can find them on Google. Um,
Mhm.
Join like Bigger Pockets, other real estate guys that you like. I will say be careful with people who are really flashy. Um, I'm not really that kind of guy. I buy my jeans at Walmart, like everybody else. But the you find some guys that have been around and doing it for a little while and didn't just show up like 6 months ago. Um, and but sometimes you may have to pay to go to an event or pay for a coach, and that's a good thing in my opinion. Of course, be wise with your investments and who is coaching you and what you're wanting to do. Um,
Sure.
and then start saving. And then if you run a budget yourself, so if you can't budget your own finances, you're going to have a really hard time with
Makes
having money
sense.
for real estate. So sort your own budget out, start saving money as much as you possibly can, and then I think the easiest way really to break in the market with real estate, just to get your feet wet, is just single family homes.
Mm,
Um, it's basic cookie cutter, run of the mill. Once you get the system down, it's pretty easy. Um, I've gotten to the point now where I can look at a house and probably in about just cursory glance on Zillow, know whether or not I'd even be interested in running the numbers on that house. And then running the numbers will take about 8 minutes or so. And then I'll know if I'm going to start pursuing that more. Um, So it once you build that up, it becomes really quick.
mhm.
Now, my dream is to get that good with like big multifamilies and mobile home parks, but we're working
Mm,
on that. That's a lot of underwriting skills right there.
I got it. I got it.
But
That's kind of what you were just talking about leads me into my next question. How do you identify and evaluate profitable rental properties?
gotcha. Well, I still use Dustin Heiner's system at Master Passive Income. And about a year and some change ago, he asked me to be a coach for his program. So I have students underneath his program and we walk them through. So I still use the same one. He has, we call it the green light analyzer. So you punch all the numbers in and it tells you if the property is going to cash flow. Now, I will caveat that a lot depends on your property manager. Is it a good property manager? They know what they're doing.
Mm,
And they need to tell you what the rent's going to be. Don't trust Zillow, but we actually use Zillow to find areas of the country to invest, and we'll look at it on a broad scale, and then we'll look for all the red dots, and then we'll just zoom in until we get to a certain area that has a lot of inventory or a lot of houses, and then we'll say, okay, well, this area looks good. Pick 3 or 4, and if you want to get a little more in the weeds, start looking at whether like job growth, population, what's
mhm.
been going on with it. Just kind of see what the trend is because if it's peaked and coming down, I don't know that I would do that now. Now, if it's coming back up, it might be a good time to get in that market, but you want to know a little bit about it. And your property managers and realtors in that area are going to be able to help you with that. So they're very important aspects to it. Um, and then from there, once you find an area and you find kind of what you're looking for,
Mhm.
just use the filters on Zillow. And we look for very cookie cutter houses. Nothing. And if it's got a pool, I'm not touching it. Um, if it's like a
Why
five,
and why is that?
because
Just too
insurance,
much problems?
well, too many
Insurance.
problems, and then insurance becomes an issue, and then you're just asking for more liability.
Mm,
So it's
gotcha.
just not attractive to me. It would have to be an Airbnb type house for me to consider that. Um, but I also think most people buy Airbnb houses the incorrect way, meaning they buy them with the anticipated cash flow of the Airbnb.
Mhm,
And if you buy them as a long term rental and it still cash flows as a long term rental and it will work
mhm,
great as an Airbnb, now you're on the right track. But if you buy it really expensive as an
mhm.
Airbnb and you're expecting $4,000 gross income a month and the mortgage payment
And
is $2,200, but a long term rental for that same property is only $1,500, well, now you're underwater $700.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
just not, in my opinion, that's not smart. You're
right.
because Airbnb is, let's face it, is just more volatile than long term rentals. So
You can't rely on that consistent income anymore.
100%. Yeah, I agree totally. But that's kind of how I started,
Okay,
looking for
I like it.
properties and running the numbers. And
I like it. Well, talk to me about the importance of mindset in achieving success in real estate investing.
oh yeah, mindset. It's so important. Um, I don't know how many people have done or had this happen to them, but I remember when I was going into the military. I'm not a big dude, right? But I was even smaller when I was like 18 years old. And I decided that I was going to go into the Marines of all the branches, right? So the one where you get beat up and all kinds of stuff in boot camp. And
Yeah, it's
um,
the hardest one, right?
it is
I mean, as
for,
far as like the 4 branches for boot camp or something like that?
yeah, it is. And so I remember I had an aunt that was like, "You're not gonna make it," and I was like, "All right," that just drove me to do it, that
Nice.
much
Well,
more.
thank you very much.
And, so I use that to my advantage, but there's gonna be people that are gonna doubt you or say you're crazy for doing real estate. So I just made it my goal to laugh all the way to the bank, so to speak. Um, but you gotta have that determination and that grit, and you just have to realize if you're afraid, that's okay. That is totally fine. That's very normal for everybody who starts investing. Even the greats, like I'm
You're
sure you,
supposed to be scared.
yeah, you could ask Grant Cardone, and I'm sure he would tell you like when he first started, he was like had to change his
Yeah,
pants probably, but
yeah.
um, it's that determination. But the biggest thing I find, maybe not the biggest, but one of the biggest, is the why. You need to know your why. Why are you doing it?
100%.
And for me, I knew that I wasn't going to retire as a police officer at the time. And I had only anticipated doing it for 10 years and I did it for a lot less than that. But um, I just knew that I didn't want that. And I didn't want to be breaking my body down because my dad's in his late 60s now
Mm.
and I'm one of seven. So he
Oh,
was
wow.
at work all the time and I was working with him from the time I was like 11 years old. So, um, but he doesn't get around like I want to be able to get around at his age. And
I
so
was about to say, he's still fairly young.
yeah, but he sacrificed a lot for us as kids.
Mm.
And um, so I just was like, I don't want to do that. I want to
Didn't
be able
want
to
that.
play with my grandkids. And they can, but they're, he's a
It's
lot
not the same.
slower. Yeah, he's a lot slower than he could be. Um, well, I mean, they got 34 grandkids, so I mean, there's like,
Whoa, nice.
yeah, yeah,
That's a lot. Holy
yeah.
smokes. I
Um,
love it.
but so and then I had been married for some time at this point and had 2 kids at the time, and it's like, well, I'd like to be able to stay home after breakfast for an hour or 2 hours and then just kinda go do something that I want to do instead of something that I have to do. And so
It's a
I
big
watch
difference.
yeah, huge difference. And I watched my father-in-law retire after 30 years at a company, and then the company got bought a year after, and his retirement was nixed by a quarter, and then he lost $30,000 because of the stock market and all kinds of
Mm,
stuff. And they were sweating bullets, and I was like, I'm not gonna wait around for that to happen. I'm gonna make it happen on my own. And
like that.
so the determination and why you're doing it is very, very important. Um, and so I was just very determined to do it, and I'm still doing it. I'm not where I want to be, but
Mm,
everybody's your goalposts change as you're in real estate. Um, I've talked to guys that said that they wanted to make $1 million in a year, and
mhm,
then like I know one guy who got bored doing it. Like he just straight got
mhm.
bored. He's like, "This is ridiculous." Like, I mean, he was going to do it. He was already on par to do it. And he
Yeah,
said, "This is kind of a ridiculous goal." And so he changed his goalpost. He changed his next goal. Um,
to make it more interesting for himself.
yeah, yeah, and to be able to help more people. And that's
Something else to keep driving towards,
exactly.
right? Like that why is what you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when I started, and it still is, I'm not out to be a millionaire. Um, that's entirely a byproduct of doing real estate the right way. If you continue to grow it, it will happen naturally. So you don't need to really push for it, really. It will naturally happen. Um, I'm one good purchase away from technically being a millionaire, and it's just not on my radar. It's not a goal anymore. Um, I just want enough passive income to be able to not go to work if I choose, to take a job that I want to do, that would be fun to do, and then take all of that money and just put it in towards the next house or the next purchase. So that's what I
You
would
just
that's it.
rinse and repeat and
Oh yeah.
just live life to its fullest. And you got family that you're going to be able to be in your kids' lives instead of being at work or away doing
Yeah.
something else,
Yeah.
which is I'm sure huge. It sounds like.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I was homeschooled. I've never seen the inside of a classroom in my life.
Very
We're doing that with our kids as well, which is a just a huge priority for us. And
awesome.
so we want to have more time to be able to help at our church, do things that are very meaningful to us. I'm a huge I love helping people. It's like a runner's high. If you're a runner and you've ever gotten runner's high, that's kind of what it feels like for me. It's super
Nice.
gratifying. But I'm not a huge center of the stage, like attention person, ironically. But I've had to do that on occasion, so I've become more comfortable with it. But
Sure.
yeah, that's basically the goal.
I like it. I love it. And I agree 100% as far as like with reading the books about, real estate. And it's always the common thing is mindset and, you having a why. Because you don't have either of those, you're set up to fail from the get-go is from what
Yeah,
I've also been reading about.
yeah, yeah. And I know guys that their goal is just to make money and all this other stuff, and it's like, well, money goes away, and
Right.
we could lose it all tomorrow. And like real estate's a risk, and you want to take risks strategically. But at the end of the day, I want my family to be better off for what I have learned and what I've been doing. And so that's the goal at the
Like
end of the day is to be furthering my family's welfare and their position. Um, and just like my kids are they're not gonna be get spoon-fed anything. They're not spoon-fed anything. Like,
Sure.
my in-laws don't even know that we have more than 1 property,
Yeah.
because they've never asked. Um, I've tried to talk to them about it many times, but it just kinda, like,
They
doesn't go anywhere, and so I kinda stopped talking about it. So I'm
oh, wow.
laughing because I'm imagining, like, year, 2 years in the future when they'll be like, "Oh, where's he at? What's he doing today?" And my wife will be like, "Well, he took the kids for a week to go down here because he doesn't have to
They're
work anymore." Um,
like, "Why?
yeah, so that's kind of the goal, and
That'll be
um,
fun."
yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'd really like to take my wife on a long trip. So we're coming up on 8 years now, and we've never really been on a long trip by ourselves. So it'd be nice.
Very cool. Yeah. Sounds like you guys it's well deserved and well overdue.
Yeah, for my wife especially. She's amazing.
There's always seems like there's, you know, a lot of support, having a wife with that support, you can't I don't think you can really succeed without that, in my opinion. Because
Yeah, no,
I
I
yeah.
agree. I I do remember though, for anybody listening whose spouse is not quite on board with them doing real estate yet,
Mhm.
give it a minute. Give it time. Keep talking about it. Just keep doing what you need to do. My wife was not on board when we got started. It took 2.5 years. And
Oh, wow.
then
Okay.
she wasn't saying no, but I had to prove that the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. And but I knew I had her when she had a dream one night and she was telling me her dream that her brother bought a house. And her first question out of her mouth in her dream was, "What was your interest rate? What was your down payment?" And I was like, as soon as she said that, I was like, all right, we're all on board now.
I love it. You're like, she's hooked."
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Perfect,
It was great.
perfect. So, what are some common mistakes new real estate investors make, and how can they be avoided?
Um, Common mistakes. That's a good question.
If you don't like it, or if
Not
you want
asking.
to
I would say not asking for help. Or thinking they know what something is and just being afraid to ask the question of what's this thing, or calling a bank and being afraid to ask them about their mortgage, their what they have available for mortgages, what type of rates they have, and then just
Mhm.
be like, look, I don't know what this is. What is this? Their job is there to help you. They want to sell you a mortgage. That's literally how they make their money. So um, don't be
They
afraid.
wanna answer your questions.
Yes. And um, just don't be afraid to ask questions. It's it's a really good thing to ask questions.
Good point. What about not being afraid to fail?
Oh, man, here's another mindset thing for you. Do not be afraid to fail. It's going to happen. Um, Everybody's got a long list, and guess what? That list gets longer the older you get. So don't be afraid to fail. I remember I was doing an interview with somebody else. I think it was Rocky Lalvani, um, and I we asked him that very same question. How do you think? What do you think about failure? He said, "Well, I got where I am through failing." So he's like, "You just need to fail, get back up, learn from that, and then go again." The most successful people are not always like Steve Jobs or some hyper genius person. Um,
Hey,
and a lot of times it's from failing. They failed,
absolutely.
they learned, they got up, they didn't make the same mistake twice. And even if they did, they learned the second time. Uh, and then they just kept doing it.
Exactly. You have to fail to succeed is what I've been taught, and, you know, um, you gotta actually, like, want to fail, and, like, that's, like, the to have the courage to push past that failure or that fear to do something. I mean, just picking up the phone to call someone, it's easier said than done, but
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. Well, admitting that you failed is really hard. Like,
it
I
is.
think for guys particularly, it's really, really hard. Like, we don't want to say like, I failed. But if you
That's
go
so
in
true.
there, don't expect to fail necessarily, but understanding that it is a high probability, but already deciding how you're going to deal with that failure if it does occur is very important.
Good point. That helps.
Yeah. So
I like it. Well, yeah, I think we got time for maybe 1 or 2 more.
cool.
Um, how has the real estate market changed over the years, and how do you adapt to these changes?
Great question. So in like I listen to a lot of different guys about real estate market, and one thing I have definitely learned is you'll get investors that will say, well, the market's just so bad right now. Well, locally, like every real estate market is localized. So you don't have to buy necessarily where you are living. And when you realize that, it broadens your horizons on what you're truly capable of doing. Like my LLC is out of Wyoming, but I own property in Virginia and Ohio. And so it's
Hmm.
like, well, that's confusing for most people, but you can totally do it. And so if the market is bad where you're at, um, you just need to change markets. You need to learn how to analyze a market and start looking in that area. And for people who are really, really hands-on owners, this can be very difficult. Um, I know how to do stuff, but it also gives me the edge of being like, I don't want to do that. So
Yeah, sure.
um, that's my favorite thing is everybody, even people in the area, because most of my properties currently are within a 45-minute drive of where I live, except for the one in Ohio. I don't go do repairs on my properties. It's
Right.
literally not worth my time. I'm too expensive.
Exactly.
Yeah. So know your worth. But it
100%.
it has definitely gotten a little bit harder to find properties. Interest rates have gone up dramatically. I remember, I mean, interest rates were sitting in the low threes when I started, and uh, I am kicking myself like hindsight's 2020 truly, and I'm kicking myself that I hadn't learned fast enough how to use private money, where to go for it, and then just bought like 10
Right.
houses in a year, like
I
15
know,
houses
right?
in a year. If I had learned that and capitalized on that, like everybody thought that the market was going to stay.
I
Um,
know.
it
But
was it
just
was a
waiting,
mistake. Yeah,
right?
but
Yeah.
currently, as far as like how do you deal with it now?
Man.
Really, it is truly just the market. If you're looking for deals and you're looking very avidly, direct mail marketing for stuff that is not on market is a great way to do things. I do think that coming up, we may see a lot of for sale by owners, people who are underwater on their mortgages because they paid way too much 2 years ago, and inflation's killing everybody. Like your dollar
Mhm.
doesn't go nearly as far anymore. So
Mhm.
I think people who are getting into it start reading up on how to do owner finance deals, how to structure it, or subject to things of that nature, because that's going to be really handy. And then line up some private money for down payments and things like that. Well, that would be my
And how much?
suggestion.
I guess it would depend on how much you would suggest to line up, where they're located, I guess, because California would be different than,
Oh,
you know,
totally.
some
Like what I found is like the Midwest and Southeast particularly have been really good. There's been some really good markets. Just to shout out a couple, I would say Alabama's been pretty good. There's some pockets of Texas that are good. There's like we have a student that I think just bought 3 houses in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Um,
Nice.
Ohio is pretty good in some pockets. Um,
Mhm.
and then I know a couple of guys that are in West Virginia. Um, be careful there because it can be really rural, and so finding a property manager can be really difficult. But
Ah.
Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, all those. If you look on outskirts of cities, a lot of times there's some
Mhm.
good little subdivisions buried back in there where
Yeah, you know.
there's houses that need like lipstick on a pig. Just run a real quick burr on it and then keep right on
Yeah,
moving.
I like it. What? What would you say, what states or areas would you say to run from? Stay from
California.
away from.
California.
I hear you,
I've
bro.
never
I
looked
hear
there and I never will.
you.
Like, I mean, not a chance, man.
I It wouldn't make any sense coming from
No
living
way.
out of state and being an absentee owner in California, like, you're just gonna lose
Well,
from
you
the
you
get-go.
lose hand over fist, and I think it's really about also what you are investing for. Like, I'm not investing for appreciation. That's the cherry on top if I buy it the right way. Because in
Mm,
real estate, you make money when you purchase a property, but you realize the money when you sell it
so
or
right,
refinance it partially.
right,
So,
right.
but as far as other states to avoid, I'm not buying in Illinois. Their
Mm,
laws are not landlord friendly. Um, And then
good
Oregon
to know.
is a little rough as far as I'm, aware that it's not a great
Okay,
spot.
good
Those
to
are
know.
the big 3 that just jump out at me as areas I'm
For sure.
not interested in even looking at.
Problem. Appreciate. That's good for people to know also, steer clear of, and they don't have to make the same mistake as, and learn the hard way.
Yeah. Yeah, we wanna keep people from doing that. So,
Well, um, you know what? We're just about out of time. Did we miss anything? Did you want to add anything? Is there anything you wanted to talk about?
um, I don't know that we missed anything, but no, I think that pretty much covered, a lot of stuff, but, if anyone's looking for a sign to get, started in real estate, this is it. I'm not God, but I'm dropping that one. So you like
Like it.
start learning, listen to podcasts. You can give me a follow on Instagram or Master Passive Income or Breakthrough Investor or this podcast as well. Start listening to Kevin some more and write your
Appreciate
questions
that.
down. Send them in and maybe he'll
Yeah,
get some people that are going to answer a bunch of questions. That'd be cool.
there you go. Absolutely. I'd be down for that. Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on and just adding a lot of value. It's just very fun to hear stories and uh, meet like-minded individuals and just being able to do these remote podcasts. We weren't able to do this a long time ago, so it's very cool.